They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I think some photos are worth a whole lot more. These 10 images were all the very last photos these people ever appeared in, some helping in figuring out what happened in those final moments, and others only adding more questions. Today we're counting down the top 10 haunting last pictures of people you weren't supposed to see. Make sure you head on over to the comments and let me know your thoughts on these haunting final images. I want to know which photo creeped you out the most. At number 10, parkour gone wrong. I'm sure you've all seen an example of parkour before, but I would personally describe it as people launching themselves from one spot to the next, avoiding injury by the skin of their teeth. Often done outdoors, some of the maneuvers these people do are seemingly impossible. While it takes a lot of practice and coordination, this sport can also be super dangerous. Parkour daredevils like to take things quite literally to the next level, and as heights get higher and tricks get more technical, disaster is not far behind. Pavel Kashin was a Russian parkour artist who unfortunately learned his lesson the hard way. In 2013, he was performing a stunt on the rooftop of a 16-story building with a friend filming. They ended up capturing the final moments of Kashin's life. He was one of the well-known parkour artists or freerunners, being named one of the best in the world, who's known for his breakthrough stunts, which you can still find videos of today. On the day of his passing, Kashin was standing on a 3-foot wide ledge on the top of an apartment building. The daredevil decided to do a backflip on this very small ledge, with him completing the trick only to lose his footing on the landing and be sent over the edge. Kashin's fans and fellow members of the parkour community showed their support and sent respects to his family. His friends uploaded the final image of Pavel mid-flip with the permission of his parents to the web. Kashin's parents hoped that the image would deter others from doing the same as their son. Number 9. Windturbine Fire. If you've ever seen a wind turbine in real life before, you will know just how massive the energy converting monsters actually are. In October 2013, 2 workers were doing routine maintenance to a 67-meter high turbine in Oltensplaat, Netherlands. Don't come for me, I know I butchered that name, but while they were doing this maintenance, a fire broke out, quickly engulfing the only escape route, trapping the workers high above the ground. Due to the height of the fire, the firefighters had a hard time reaching the fire to put it out, so a specialized crew of firefighters were called in with a large crane. Unfortunately, this took hours, which the technicians did not have. In their last moments, a photo of the tragedy was snapped, and in it you can see the turbine in a blaze, but you can also see the 2 workers embracing in their final moments. The image just amplifies how big the turbine actually is and shows how hopeless a rescue mission would have been. The men were just 19 and 21 at the time. One tried one last effort to survive, with one man jumping from the wind turbine in the last effort to save himself, and the other tried to scale down the side only to be caught up in the blaze. The man who jumped was found in a field next to the turbine, and the other was found when firefighters were able to finally climb to the turbine. The cause of the fire is unknown, but believed to be a short circuit. While this freak accident ended up taking 2 lives, the tragedy led to a political inquiry into safety precautions for wind turbine maintenance crews. Their final photo together was sad, but it was nice that in their final moments they did have each other. Number 8. Racing to disaster. Gary Box was one of the many firefighters who was there on 9/11, risking it all in order to save lives. Unfortunately, he was also one of the many who never made it home after that day. Hours before heroically losing his life, Box was photographed racing towards the disaster. The image was taken in the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel by a pedestrian in their car. Their engine got stuck in the traffic of the tunnel, so in full gear, carrying as much as they could, Box and the rest of his crew started running on foot to ground zero. Gary was 35 at the time, and his remains were never recovered. All images taken that day I'm sure have something haunting about them, but knowing how little time he had left is another level. At number 7. Reynaldo Dagsa. He was a Filipino politician, a member of the Peacekeeping Action Team, and a corporal in the Philippine Army Reserve Command. Now, this photo is not of Dagsa before he passed, but due to how haunting it is, I still had to include it. His passing achieved notoriety due to the picture he snapped of his family on New Year's with unbelievable timing. The image Dagsa captured also inadvertently captured the man who was about to take the shot that would ultimately take his life. The photo was extremely helpful when it came to investigators identifying the shooter, because the image shows the gunman quite literally seconds before taking the fatal shot. The picture was taken outside the councilman's house in metropolitan Manila. The photo led to a quick arrest of the shooter as well as his accomplice. Apparently the suspects were known car thieves out on bail, likely holding a grudge against Dagsa, who had the men arrested a year earlier. It is extremely sad that Dagsa unknowingly captured his own final moments, especially with his family being right there, but at least they were able to use it to catch the gunman. Number 6. Discount flight. Keith Sapsford was from Randwick, New South Wales. He passed away just 14 years old with his final moments caught on camera. On February 22, 1970, the teen snuck onto the tarmac at Sydney Airport in Australia with the idea to hide inside a Tokyo-bound plane in order to run away. Unfortunately, Sapsford would never make it to Tokyo. His father described Keith as a curious kid who always had an urge to keep on the move. Due to his restlessness, his parents decided to send him to Boys Town, a Roman Catholic institution specializing in troubled children, for some discipline and structure. Instead, Sapsford escaped from the facility after a couple weeks and headed to the airport. Thanks to the far more relaxed regulations and security of the 70s, Sapsford was able to sneak onto the tarmac with ease. It's unknown if Keith knew where the plane was headed, but he saw a plane preparing for boarding and climbed into its wheel well. It took a few hours for the plane to take off, but eventually it made its way to the sky. What Keith didn't know was that the plane was going to reopen the wheel compartments to retract the wheels. When this happened, Sapsford fell out of the plane, falling 200 feet. One of the craziest things about this tragic event was by pure coincidence. Photographer John Gilpin was simply taking pictures at the airport when he unknowingly snapped a pic at the exact same time Sapsford was falling from the plane. I bet when he developed that roll of film, he was totally surprised. His father later said, "All my son wanted to do was see the world. He had itchy feet, and his determination to see how the rest of the world lives cost him his life." Obviously, what happened to Keith was a tragedy, but the photo captured by Gilpin is remarkable as well as haunting. At number 5. Fatal Friend. Brittany Gargle and Cheyenne Antoine were the best of friends until they weren't. Apparently, Brittany was extremely hardworking. At 16, she was juggling school and 2 jobs. Antoine had a rough upbringing with her parents falling into substance use. Cheyenne grew up in foster care. At 15, Antoine's mother passed away, and to cope with the news, she got involved with some dangerous company, also falling into substance use. That's when the two girls met, and Brittany helped Cheyenne manage her feelings, and the two became close. On March 25, 2015, Brittany posted a picture of her and Cheyenne on social media. The two planned to go out for drinks and have fun, but as the night went on, things got out of hand and the details became fuzzy. The girls traveled to a pub, then to a house party, and then one more pub. Cheyenne claimed that around 4 a.m. Brittany asked a man for a lighter and invited him for drinks, but she didn't know what happened later. Cheyenne heard nothing from Brittany the next day, and later the police received a 911 call of a woman lying on her back, cold to the touch. The woman was identified as Brittany. Cheyenne was questioned and her story checked out, but the police thought she was hiding something. As the police dug further, more details came out. In the end, Brittany's passing was ruled a strangling, and this led them to a crucial lead. It was the picture Cheyenne had posted on social media the night of the events. In it, Cheyenne was wearing a stylish black belt, the same belt that had been found at the crime scene. In 2017, after all the evidence collected, Cheyenne was arrested for taking Brittany's life, with Cheyenne claiming not to remember anything due to the substances. In the end, Cheyenne was sentenced to 7 years in prison, with her release in 2024. At number 4, the final dive. Nicholas Mavoli was an American free diver who passed doing what he loved, but not before taking a picture that will give you the chills. Mavoli began freediving competitively in 2012, winning titles twice at the Deja Blue competition and finishing 3rd at the Caribbean Cup in Honduras. With much success in his newfound passion, Mavoli only wanted to take things even further. On November 15, 2013, he prepared to dive into Dean's Blue Hole, hoping to reach 72 meters on a single inhalation with no fins or supplemental oxygen. Surrounded by 15 other athletes and observers, as well as 5 safety divers, he submerged face first, looking like a human arrow diving into the darkness that would ultimately end up being his last dive. Mike Board, freediving record holder, said diving into a depth with no fins, that's a hard physical dive. I was thinking, okay, he's going to have a hard time getting up. Yet, after a dive of 3 minutes and 38 seconds, Mavoli shot back up to the surface. Unfortunately, instead of celebrating the dive, things quickly turned into a nightmare. Mavoli ripped off his goggles, flashed the OK sign, and attempted to complete surface protocol that would make the attempt official by saying, "I am okay," but he wasn't. His words came out jumbled and his eyes were wide and blank. blank. This moment was captured on camera, and the blank fear in the diver's eyes is frightening. He lost consciousness and never regained it after suffering a pulmonary edema. Number 3. Dyatlov Pass Mystery. The Dyatlov Pass incident was the event in which 9 Soviet trekkers passed away in the northern Ural Mountains between February 1st and 2nd, 1959 in uncertain circumstances. There are many theories as to what caused the tragedy, but ultimately it's a mystery. The experienced trekking group from the Yuri Polytechnic Institute was led by Igor Dyatlov. Overnight, something seemingly caused the group to cut their way out of their tent from inside and flee the campsite. While them cutting open their tent from the inside is confusing enough, the bodies found were improperly dressed for the heavy snowfall and the freezing temperatures. As the story goes on, things only get further from making sense. After the bodies were discovered, Soviet authorities determined that 6 had passed from hypothermia, while the other 3 suffered physical trauma. 1 had major skull damage, 2 severe chest trauma, and another had a small skull fracture. 4 of the bodies were found lying in a creek, and 3 of those bodies had soft tissue damage to the head and face. 2 bodies were missing eyes, 1 missing a tongue, and another had missing eyebrows. Now, if it had just been the hypothermia, this case would be totally different, but what the heck did all this physical damage in the middle of nowhere? While we aren't sure exactly what went down, there are lots of pictures of the group's final days as well as plenty of theories. There was a new investigation opened in 2019 calling it an avalanche, but I don't know still. Does an avalanche really remove your tongue and eyeballs? Number 2. Miracle of the Andes. On October 13th, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, chartered by an amateur rugby team, crashed into the Andes Mountains. The wreckage of the crash was not located for more than 2 months. There were only 16 out of 45 who survived the whole thing, with the incident gaining international attention after it was revealed the survivors had resorted to cannibalism. Due to the bad weather, the pilot of the plane misjudged their location, and the plane ended up striking a mountain, losing both wings before crashing into a remote valley of Argentina, near the Chilean border. A search party was sent out, but due to the white plane on the white snow, it was unable to be spotted from above. After 8 days, the search was called off, thinking there were no survivors, though later rescue efforts were taken over by family. There were initially 33 survivors, but due to the elements, injuries, and an avalanche, the numbers were shrinking. Several survivors surveyed the area for an escape route. On December 12th, almost exactly 2 months since the crash, 3 men set out to go find help. Though one did return to the crash site after a difficult trek, the other 2 men finally came across some people. It was December 20th now, and the people they found alerted the authorities. On December 22nd, 6 survivors were flown to safety, but bad weather meant the remaining 8 waited until the 23rd. There are photos from both before the crash of the group on the plane and after of the group surrounding the fallen plane, as well as books and a movie about the incident. And at number 1, solo hike. In 2014, 2 women, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, were visiting Panama from the Netherlands, and on April 1st they went on a walk through the scenic forest near the Baru volcano, only to never return. Alarm was raised the day after they didn't return from their hike, and a search party was sent out right away, only to find no sign of Kremers or Froon. A while later, a local woman found Froon's backpack. In the bag they found her camera, 2 pairs of sunglasses, some cash, her passport, a water bottle, 2 bras, and both the women's phones. Probably the most concerning they found were the final images taken on the camera. All of the photos from April 1st are just the 2 women exploring the jungle. Then there are no pictures until April 8th, when 90 unsettling pictures were taken with the flash in the middle of the jungle, timestamped between 1 and 4 a.m. Most of these images are of complete darkness and the jungle floor, but there are 2 very alarming pics. One shows some of the women's belongings on a rock, and the other looks like the back of Kremers' head with what appears to be bloodstain in her hair. Something else suspicious about the camera is that image 509 was missing, with 508 being the last of them looking okay, and image 510 being the first in the darkness days later. They found a pelvic bone and a foot still inside a boot. Froon's bones appeared to decompose naturally, but Kremers seemed to be stark white as if they'd been bleached, further leading to question if someone else was involved. That was the top 10 haunting last pictures of people you weren't supposed to see. I have been your host, Maddie, and I will catch you later.